I've been using the Sony A7 IV for a little bit over a year now, and I have to say I absolutely love this camera. So today I'm going to answer the questions who the Sony A7 IV is for, and whether or not you should buy this in 2023. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been using the A7 IV for a little bit over a year now, but before we talk about my experience using it, let's briefly go over the specs, and I'm not going to go too much into detail. Obviously, I'm not really interested in that. What we're most really interested in is whether or not this camera actually produces some nice images and is a good camera to use. So the A7 IV has a 33 megapixel sensor. Obviously, that's great enough already for decently sized billboard printing, so don't have to worry about that. You can shoot 4K in 10-bit color and 4K 60 in 10-bit color as well, but although you do have a slight crop, so that's already great. You got 4K slow motion, don't really need much more than that. Of course, it has the Sony autofocus system, which is absolutely amazing. And of course, finally, we have the flippy screen, which is absolutely a game changer. Having come from the A7 III, I really do appreciate that flippy screen now. And I have to say, that's basically all you really need to know about this camera. If you're really interested in how many stops of dynamic range this camera has and all the details like the sensor and all that post-processing crazy computer nonsense, there's plenty of videos online already. Me personally, I'm not really that interested in that. At the end of the day, all I really care about is whether or not the camera produces a good image quality and it's easy to use and reliable. And I have to say that the A7 IV checks all those boxes. Now let's talk about my experience and what I like and dislike about the camera, because I feel like those go hand in hand. So let's first talk about the things I do like. First off, I have to say that this is a very reliable camera. I haven't had any problems with the Sony A7 IV yet. I haven't had any problems with any Sony cameras that I've used ever. So that's great, because if you're out shooting a job for a client and it's paid work, the last thing you want is camera troubles. I mean, imagine that you're on a wedding shoot or something like that. It's a one-time thing. If the camera stops working, then you're basically screwed, and it's a very, very important event. It's important for these people. You know, everyone's working on a schedule, so it's very important to have a camera that is reliable and performs when you need it to. The quality is great. Like I mentioned earlier, everything that comes out of this camera looks really, really good. I have no complaints whatsoever. It's really, like, you know, in terms of quality, it hasn't let me down, and I have to say, for the value you're getting, it's very, very good. But to be completely frank, you know, a like $600 DSLR will probably get you pretty good quality images if you're uploading it to social media. Most people probably won't be able to tell the difference, but if you're going to print work and you know you're going to be viewing stuff on a really big screen, pixel peeping and whatnot, then yes, there is going to be a noticeable difference, and the A7 IV has really, really good quality in that aspect. But once again, if most of your work is going to be uploaded, you know, on Instagram, Facebook, social media, TikTok and whatnot, videos on going on YouTube and stuff like that, and your clients are mainly posting it on social media, it's not that necessary to have a camera in this price range. But for the professional features you get and the quality, it's always nice, because if you ever want to do some kind of physical work, physical prints, or you know, something that's going to be on a large screen, you have the 4K, you get the 10-bit colors, which is great. So it's always great to have that rather than not. The new Sony autofocus system is amazing, especially with the focus tracking. I can literally just tap something on the screen and it will keep focus 90% of the times. Some third-party lenses don't perform as well in low light conditions with the track autofocus and whatnot, but I feel like that's more so on the fault on the lens manufacturer, because with Sony glass, I've never had any issues. Good example is my Sigma 35 f1.4. Sometimes when I'm shooting into direct sunlight and my subject is very, very dark, very in the shade, then it does struggle a little bit to sometimes get the focus right away, but with every other lens I've used, literally no problems. The flippy screen is great as well. I mean, nowadays when you're shooting a lot of vertical content for stuff like Instagram, TikTok, Instagram Reels and everything like that, then it's always great to have that flippy screen, because it allows you, when you're shooting video, to rotate the camera and flip the screen out and kind of rest it on your palm. That way you can look down instead of having to kind of lean back and look towards a flat screen. So you can hold the camera at kind of chest height and look down at a screen that's flipped out towards you is great as well. Absolutely love that. And of course, once again, Sony is maintaining their one mount system, which is great. So if you're someone who has some Sony lenses or friends who have Sony lenses, then you guys can basically match and share lenses, which is always a great thing to have. And when it comes to downsides, there's only really two that I can really mention. One isn't even really that serious, but the first one is, of course, the 4K 60 crop. It does kind of suck that we do get a 1.5 times crop, especially as someone who really likes prime lenses, and I shoot mainly with prime lenses. It really does suck because my 35, for example, basically becomes like a 50mm, 60mm, and I do want sometimes that 35mm f1.4. So if you want a specific focal length you've got to change your lenses, and that obviously isn't fun to always change the lenses. Think of it this way: if you're going out to shoot something and every time you want slow motion you have to change the lenses, obviously it's quite annoying, because maybe you have a shot in mind and you want to both try it out, you know, regular speed and in slow motion. Then you've got to change your lens back and forth, and it is annoying because it does ruin kind of the workflow, you know, when you're in that zen state and you're just creating great content and, you know, you're really on a roll. It always sucks to have to stop, open your bag, change the lens and whatnot. So just something to keep in mind: if you want ultra wide slow motion on the A7IV, you need to buy the Sony 10-18 f4, because it's an APS-C lens, and when you use it with the 1.5 times crop, it basically gets rid of that vignetting and fills in the frame a little bit more. You can get around about, I believe it's like a 15mm, 14mm ultra wide slow motion, and it's an actual focal length. For example, if I was going to use my Tamron 17-28 slow motion on the A7IV, then that would become essentially a 17 1.5. It would become like a 25mm, 28mm. I'll put it up here. So yeah, in that aspect, it's actually quite interesting that Sony has the one mount system. Another great thing about it, so you can use the APS-C lenses, and they are usually cheaper. So it's great that we have that option available to us, that kind of workaround or loophole, so to speak, rather than not being able to fix that at all. So yeah, it's great if you're someone who's on a little bit of a budget and can really only afford a camera in this price range. And the second thing is, if you're someone who's now getting into 4K 10-bit, you're going to have to buy some new SD cards if you want the nice codecs. They're not too expensive. You can go for V60 cards, to be honest. Those are plenty enough, or V90s if you want, and that's something that I didn't realize when I first bought the A7IV. So yeah, that was a little bit of a shocker to me, but just something to keep in mind: a little bit of extra cost when you're going through this camera and you really want to be able to use the best codecs at the highest bit rates. You're going to have to get some faster SD cards. So that wraps up my kind of experience, likes and dislikes. So let's talk about now who this camera really is for and whether or not it is a right match for you. The A7IV honestly is for hybrid shooters, people who do a true 50-50 work. Of course, you could probably use the A7IV as like a B camera if maybe, for example, you have like an A7S as a main camera, or maybe an FX camera as your main camera. It's a great BTS camera for example, if you need someone to film some behind the scenes footage. You got 10-bit, you got 4K 60, and of course you've got the 33 megapixels with amazing autofocus. So it is really a true 50-50 hybrid camera in my opinion. It can do pretty much everything great. Maybe there are some other cameras that can do one photography or videography slightly better than the A7IV, but in my opinion, just the reliability, the autofocus system, as someone who's working independently, you know, you're a one-man crew, it's always great to be able to just sit in front of the camera, turn it on, hit record, and know that the camera is going to do a perfect job and you're not going to have to worry about anything. And that's kind of the package you're getting with the A7IV. It just works. This is also a great kind of entry-level professional camera, if that makes sense. You know, you're basically just touching the professional cameras. I would say this is kind of like a prosumer grade camera, whereas you've got professional features, you can make professional things, but obviously it's kind of the bottom of the barrel when you compare it to professional cameras. And in that aspect, I feel like this is actually a great choice financially as well, because if you buy this camera, you're probably not going to need to upgrade for another 3-4 years. And if you're doing paid work, then the camera is definitely going to pay for itself in that time frame. So just to briefly wrap up again, buy this camera if you're someone who's got a little bit more money to spend and are looking to get basically professional level photos and videos done. Absolutely amazing camera. Can't really say anything bad about it. If you found this review / rant informational, or you know, this helped you in any way, please let me know down below. I definitely love to know if I actually helped you, gave you any good information, and let me know your thoughts about the A7IV if you do have it, whether or not you're considering to buy it. And if you enjoyed the video, I definitely appreciate a like and subscribe. And one more thing, if you're actually wanting to become a professional photographer, maybe a successful photographer, have your photography business and want to properly integrate photography into your life, then reach out to me in my Instagram. The link will be in the description. I have a limited amount of slots available for my coaching program, where I basically teach you how to become a successful photographer. So once again, contact me at my Instagram. I'll leave a link for that down below, and I'll see you guys around.